Zombies are kind of the perfect video game enemy. These guys come in huge quantities, several different varieties, and they're just inhuman enough to keep you from feeling any emotions when you take them out. It's easy to see why they keep showing up everywhere. But in a sea of zombie games, one continues to stand out among its peers, despite its age. And even though it might appear a bit brain dead at first glance, it's actually rather clever with how it attacks players' senses. And when it comes to completion, it can either feel like a party or an absolute nightmare, depending on how you choose to tackle it. It's the end of the world, people, so let's finally complete Left 4 Dead 2.
Here comes a new challenger!
Yes!
Danger!
Hey everyone, and welcome to The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. This week, it's a blast from the past. In fact, I don't think I've touched Left 4 Dead 2 since around the time of its release about 10 years ago. And that's probably because there hasn't been a peep out of the franchise in all that time. Oh look, yet another Valve franchise that seems incapable of counting past the number 3. But it's not like fans have been praying for the series to continue simply because they like the nice round feel of the number 3. Well, 3 is not technically a round number, but you know what I mean. Players have been hoping for these series to be made into trilogies because Valve seems to excel at and redefine every genre it touches. People are still grinding on Team Fortress 2. Half-Life 2 is a masterclass in single-player narrative, and Portal 2 is damn near perfect. And then there's Left 4 Dead, which by today's standards might not seem like anything special. I mean, you can't spit in a video game nowadays without hitting 3 zombies across the forehead, but it wasn't that long ago that zombies were only beginning to ascend onto their pop culture throne thanks to an overnight boom in zombie media. Thanks a lot, Zack Snyder and Paul W.S. Anderson. Danny Boyle? You're still cool. So when Left 4 Dead first hit shelves in 2008, right in the middle of America's love affair with the undead, it managed to turn a lot of heads with its unique combination of cooperative gameplay, genuinely spooky atmosphere, and procedurally generated content. Not to mention that it was also an early entry in the asymmetrical multiplayer genre. People definitely took notice of this little funky title, and I was one of them. I remember hosting many a LAN party back in college, with plenty of pizza, pals, and good old hyper-violence. Left 4 Dead only further snowballed our culture's zombie obsession, ensuring a sequel only a year later. That's one hell of a turnaround, but it makes sense when you realize that Left 4 Dead 2 was much more of an expansion than a full-on reinvention. Just like the original, it still follows a quartet of unlucky sons of guns as they make their way to safety, one breakneck-paced chapter at a time, through an onslaught of the seething members of the undead.
Technically, they're not undead, they're just infected.
Look, the game calls them zombies, I'm calling them zombies. Left 4 Dead 2 still brought plenty of new and unique elements to the table, setting itself apart from its predecessor and cementing it as the definitive cooperative zombie shooter of its era, especially when they rolled all of the original Left 4 Dead content into the sequel. So you can now basically play all of the first game within the second, making Left 4 Dead 2 feel like a playable museum of the franchise's brief history, which is why I'm choosing to ignore the first Left 4 Dead and skip straight to completing this one on the PC, just as Zombie Jesus intended. But even though the game's lifespan was rather short, it's a hefty little package with more than its fair share of content. There are tons of campaigns to run through, several extra modes, and tons of in-game achievements that will inevitably have me scratching my eyes out. But at least I'll have a good time along the way, because Left 4 Dead 2 isn't just a mindless spray and pray shooter. It's actually meticulous with how it conveys information, and knows how to stimulate its players in just the right ways. Look, for the most part, Left 4 Dead 2 is about as subtle as getting hit by a truck. By design, it's loud, fast, and perpetually all up in your face. But with a little examination, it becomes clear that this game pierces through all the white noise. and successfully convey some of its most critical information in impressively efficient, immersive, and delightful ways. But in order to understand how clever Left 4 Dead can be, we first have to understand how dumb it can be. For instance, the gameplay is exceedingly simple. The starter's pistol goes off, and you and your squad hustle your buns from safe room A to safe room B, fighting off hordes of infected trying to stop you, and occasionally grabbing some weapons and health items along the way, all of which culminates with the final siege, collect-a-thon, or mad dash to safety. So in essence, Left 4 Dead 2 feels like a high-speed version of one of those haunted mazes at an amusement park. You're constantly being funneled down a path, occasionally stopping for a pre-planned spook. There's very little world to explore in Left 4 Dead. Instead, each campaign is broken into 3 to 5 chapters, all of which boil down to getting to the safe room without getting killed. This might sound disappointingly linear and repetitive, but that's where Left 4 Dead's director system comes in. It's as smart as a whip AI that reads the player's behavior and alters the game based on that information. Like for instance, if you're taking your sweet ass time through a chapter, the director might just spawn extra hordes of zombies to mess with you. And if it detects that you're getting beat up a lot, it might spawn some extra health packs for you. Or maybe not. And not knowing is kind of where the fun comes from. You never really know how your campaign run is going to go, even if you've played through it dozens of times already. The director ensures that you're going to get the experience du jour every time, taking what could have been a monotonous slog and turning it into perpetually tense moments. What seems like an overly simple series of hallways for you to mindlessly shoot zombies in are actually the variable avenues through which an intelligent AI can mess with you, like a scientist with a rat in a maze. It's easy to underestimate Left 4 Dead due to its visuals too, which constantly seem at odds with itself. On one hand, it seems to be striving for realism with its sturdy color scheme and attention to visual detail. And on the other hand, you've got on-screen prompts constantly popping up and items and characters having thick colored outlines highlighting them, completely breaking the immersion. But these overt tips aren't there because Valve thinks its players are stupid. They're there because Valve understands just how much information needs to be quickly conveyed when you're playing a game that moves this fast with other human beings. There were plenty of times while I was completing this game when the screen was just full of horse shit, and I thanked Zombie Jesus for my ability to easily tell the difference between friend and foe. It can feel like a godsend when the game points you towards a nearby health kit. And yeah, sometimes you just need help finding the exit. There's no shame in that. But here's how you know Left 4 Dead is actually smart. It doesn't just go around making things obvious everywhere. It only exercises that level of overtness in just the right places. So for example, it's very helpful to be able to spot a spitter far in the distance, thanks to its neon green saliva trailing behind it. Being able to make your entire team break ranks with a well-placed spittle shot is a powerful effect, so you should be able to see her coming. But you shouldn't be able to see the jockey who excels at ambushes quite so easily. Furthermore, less difficult alternate paths are often tucked away or obscured. And also, there are plenty of sequences where you'll be in damn near pitch blackness. And when all else fails, there's the boomer, who can just straight up take away your potentially overpowered sense of sight for a while. Real talk, shoutouts to the special infected. They're what makes this game so memorable and enjoyable. And at this point, I don't even think of them as enemies anymore. They're just family.
This day and age to read any good news on the newspaper page. Love and tradition of the grand design, some people say is even harder to find. Well, then there must be some magic clue inside these gentle walls. 'Cause all I see is a tower of dreams, real love bursting out of every scene.
If you want some really clever stuff, then look no further than the sound design. Sound is extremely important in Left 4 Dead, which makes sense considering how much visual stimuli is constantly thrown at you. Oftentimes, your first and only clue that something's about to go down is what you hear. It could be the telltale theme of an incoming horde attack, the growl of a particular special infected, or one of the special infected's patented musical jingles, including "Here Come the Boomer Now" and I'm a jockey, I must ride you. Almost every musical element in the game is derived from the same simple motif that makes up the general Left 4 Dead theme, and that reincorporation of elements is satisfying. Look, this game could have easily been made without all of the attention to audio detail. In fact, you get a small taste of that when you play through the chapter with the thundering storm that drowns out all the other sounds. You can't hear a damn thing, and that's scary as hell. When this game just removes stuff you take for granted, you realize just how carefully planned and balanced all of its elements are. And I think one of Left 4 Dead's most skillfully balanced features is its very tone. Instead of going for completely bleak earnestness or full-on comedy at the other end of the spectrum, Left 4 Dead achieves a tongue-in-cheek vibe that lies somewhere in the middle. And you can see a perfect example of this marriage in my favorite spots in the game, the safe rooms. No, they're not my favorite because they're the only places where I'm guaranteed to not get my kicked in. It's because of these messages scrawled on the walls. They're written by other survivors that you never get to see, but you know that they are or were out there trying to survive this apocalypse just like you. While some of these messages are legitimately well written and funny, others are downright heartbreaking, and both work fine, just like Left 4 Dead's tone. That same balance is seen throughout the environments too, like in the melancholy remains of a highway full of people that abandon their cars in desperation, which speaks volumes without a single word. And then you've got Mustachio, a carnival mascot who's a pistachio with a mustache. But I think this all works because the game lets these elements do the storytelling on their own. There are no cutscenes to speak of, and the game never takes the controller away from you. And yet you still get a very clear sense of this world and the characters that live in it. And that includes the playable survivors too. They each feel like unique people and their dialogue is fantastic. I'm once again reminded of the halcyon days of the arcade, where tons of character was conveyed quickly and efficiently. Those restrictions bred creativity, and the same thing is going on here in Left 4 Dead. This game may present itself with a movie motif, and the ties between campaigns may be loose at best. But that's just how this game prioritizes gameplay over narrative. And because of that prioritization, Valve has once again created a game that smartly uses its narratives and its audio visuals to support the gameplay. So while Left 4 Dead might seem simple or even mindless at first glance, there's actually big brain stuff going on all over this game. And that includes the gameplay itself, which poses a very important choice to the player. Now, no matter how you slice it, you're gonna be playing with a team in Left 4 Dead 2. It's you and your 3 amigos versus the world. But those partners can either be humans or AI-controlled bots, and that difference will severely affect how you get things done. And if you're set on completing this game, then that same choice will end up making the experience feel like two completely different beasts. Let's look at the pros and cons of both. When it comes to old-fashioned homegrown human beings, the pros are kind of obvious. You can actively communicate with each other, plan for likely scenarios, and adapt on the fly to unlikely ones. You can min-max your chances of survival by assigning things like a dedicated sniper, a melee weapon main, and even someone to carry around a defibrillator just in case things get really foobar. But the cons are that people are people, and people are fallible as hell. Humans miss shots, humans get nervous, and humans make poor decisions. They will mess up, and progress will be lost. And then there's the bots, who have the benefit of effectively serving as walking turrets most of the time. When you play by yourself, these 3 Terminators will usually trail right behind you and use their AI-enabled perfect aim to take out dudes that you didn't even know existed. Sometimes they can even find useful items that you weren't aware of. Plus, they're pretty predictable. You can always count on them to hand you some pills or pick you up off the ground, no matter what. But on the flip side, these guys are dumb. For instance, they'll never pick up throwable items. They'll just pass up dozens of pipe bombs, Molotovs, and bottles of boomer bile. And since you can only carry one of those items at a time, all those useful items end up going to waste. They also tend to use their own health items inefficiently, and sometimes they'll just do inexplicable shit. Why are you just punching a box, Bill? Shoot the goddamn monsters! So, you can either choose to squat up or be the lone survivor with 3 emotionless sentries backing you up. There's really no absolute best way to play, especially when you're just making your way through all of Left 4 Dead 2's campaigns. There may be a ton of these campaigns to beat, but normal mode is forgiving enough that you can just turn your brain off and enjoy the end of the world like the party, like so many people erroneously think it would be. Like, let's be real, everyone. Come the apocalypse, you're all doomed. But the choice between man and machine gets a lot harder when it's time to beat expert mode. See, there's an achievement for making it through 5 expert mode campaigns, and that name is not an exaggeration. You've got to know these levels like the back of your hand because everything hurts in expert mode. Normally, the regular zombies will bop you for a couple of HP, but in this mode, they'll take off 20% with a clean hit. That's 5 hits and you're down. And the special infected are way tougher and smarter too. The tank can take you down in a single hit, and the witch will straight up kill you in one shot. Not downed, but dead. Like I've fallen and I can't get up, but forever. Honestly, your teammates can be the deadliest thing in expert mode, since friendly fire is devastating. And in a mode where just about anything can kill you, panic, and thus, friendly fire incidents are a lot more frequent. At least that's the case when you're playing with humans, as the bots are actually incapable of friendly fire. That's 1 point for the Machine Empire. But here's the thing, most of the time, I'd prefer to play expert mode with my friends, even with their unpredictability. Being able to plan and adapt as the director threw things at us was too good a factor to pass up, and that factor was ultimately what got me that expert mode achievement. Well, it was that and one particular mission. See, Left 4 Dead 2 has these campaign modifiers called Mutations, and they come in a bunch of different flavors. There's one where everybody gets chainsaws, one where only headshots are effective, and a mode where it's just you without a team versus only special infected. They're pretty fun, and they explain how someone could still be playing this game after all this time. But the one mutation that I was interested in was called Gibfest for some reason, wherein all players spawn with an infinite ammo version of the M60, one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Normally, you'd have to be lucky enough to stumble across this bad boy in the middle of a campaign, and even when you do, it cannot be reloaded. Once you're out, you are out. But with Gibfest, you can just lay on the trigger. And for some reason, playing on Gibfest will still count towards the expert mode achievement. So, as you can imagine, this made things way easier. I was even able to beat a few campaigns with the bots. Sure, it's cheesy, but this game isn't meant to be completed in the short amount of time I have. So, I did whatever I could. It's the end of the world. The rules are out the window. New world order. But Gibfest was unselectable for one of the hardest achievements of all. To complete Left 4 Dead 2, you have to beat an expert campaign with realism mode activated. This thing takes all the multicolored outlines and on-screen prompts and takes them behind the shed and puts them out of their misery. Every enemy is even tougher, and if one of your partners dies, they can't be revived like normal. You have to wait until the start of the next chapter. It's incredibly jarring having so much of your visibility taken away from you, and realism mode only exacerbated the problems inherent to playing with other human beings. But ultimately, I went with humans over bots for this challenge, and while it took a long time to finally accomplish, with many deaths along the way, we eventually made it. And honestly, it was nice to have this feather in my cap. We did it with no Gibfest as a team. Go Team Humans! There's still a ton of other ways to play this game, namely Versus Mode, which lets you play as the Special Infected, which feels refreshing as all hell after playing through so many campaigns. You'd be surprised how many users are still alive and kicking through Versus Mode all these years later. I know I was. I could always find an active game, which usually consisted of a full team playing as survivors versus 4 players spawning as the zombies. And playing as those zombies is fun as hell. The game's versus mode feels like football, where the survivors are just trying to inch as close as possible towards the safe room end zone, with the undead playing D. You switch between offense and defense after each round, but to be honest, and this just might be due to how long I spent beating the campaigns, but I never wanted to play as the survivors. I actually found myself disappointed whenever my zombie team would defeat the humans too quickly, causing us to switch to the infield that much sooner. But of course, there are a slew of versus mode achievements, but surprisingly, some of them are actually fun to shoot for. It genuinely feels good to be a spitter and upchuck on all 4 doofuses huddled up together. But some of these requirements are also hard as hell to set up, such as in order to tackle someone as the charger over 80 feet, I had to perch in just the right spot like Batman and wait for them to walk by so we could both go skydiving. And when you inevitably get to the point where you're just trying to knock off specific versus achievements, it's a bummer to get randomly spawned as the wrong special infected over and over again. I get that's how the game is supposed to work, but when you're trying to complete this thing, it can feel like RNGesus has it out for you personally. Not to mention the achievement for playing through an entire campaign in Versus, which sounds like a cakewalk, and it would be if players weren't constantly dropping out of matches in droves, sending the remaining players back to the lobby. But once again, I got by with a little help from my friends, with some assistance from my co-workers, as well as Rankosic, Cypheus, Tango, and Sleepy Skullhead over on the Completionist Discord. We had the bodies for an 8-person lobby. And with several hours, a lot of coordination, and one extremely finicky, almost broken achievement for defibrillating a teammate after reaching the safe room, we were able to knock out the rest of the super specific achievements. Thanks again, guys. Yes, I gamed the system, but I simply don't have the time to sit around hoping to spawn as the zombie I need with the right setup and with the right teammates that won't quit in the middle of a game. Seriously, how else was I supposed to get the achievement for bringing down a tank with only melee weapons? Bots and random people online weren't gonna let that happen. I had no choice but to bring in ringers for Left 4 Dead's 2 other modes: Survival, in which you have to last as long as possible in a no-win scenario, and Scavenger, in which you have to collect items while fighting off attackers. And these are 2 actually cool modes. The problem is that I could never find a match for them. Absolute ghost towns. Once again, I can't help but imagine what completing this game would have been like without help. It would have felt completely different and maybe even insurmountable without months of dedicated time. And even if you had all the time in the world, you still wouldn't be able to fully complete Left 4 Dead 2, as there are 3 black marks on the face of the game's completion criteria. There are 3 achievements which are straight up impossible to unlock at this point. There's 1 for killing Special Infected during an event from 2011, and 2 for playing during one of those random periods when the game was temporarily free to play. I'm sure those achievements were nice badges of honor for those who were around during that time, but it makes me and people like me want to throw up a little bit. I somehow lucked my way into one of the holiday achievements, but the point still stands. Even if you have the time and motivation to complete this game, these 3 blemishes will savagely curtail your motivation. That's the true apocalypse. Uncompletable games. That and climate change, and the fall of empathy, and more Snyder and Anderson movies. You know, given the short, bite-sized nature of this game's level structure, I'm surprised there aren't more unlockables in Left 4 Dead 2. Can't you picture unlocking some fun skins for your survivors, or even the infected for accomplishing feats in specific chapters? Imagine shooting down mobs of horrible Muppet-like creatures while you're dressed as a firefighter stripper. But no, there's not really anything here to unlock at all, or show that you've gone the distance for completion. In all honesty, it didn't take me long to realize that Left 4 Dead 2 wasn't meant for completion, at least not in the time frame that I have. I mean that Left 4 Dead 2 is best experienced with a group of friends, in short bursts over a long period of time. And that's just not how most people complete games. I'm good on Left 4 Dead solo for a long time. Maybe I'll dig it back up another 10 years from now. But if some friends want to play a round or 2, I can be convinced to come along. While I completed Left 4 Dead 2, there were 44 total deaths, the vast majority of which were racked up during those brutal expert mode runs. If you're gonna go for that achievement, get used to dying. 13 campaigns beaten, with plenty of variety between them and plenty of tension in the long haul thanks to the director system. 68 achievements unlocked, not 70, because you had to be there achievements are a thing, I guess. Over 12,000 infected killed, with each one fulfilling their sacred duty as video game cannon fodder. 32 hours of total playtime, and 7 seasons of the Special Infected show that you can probably catch at Nick at Night or on TV Land. Left 4 Dead 2 got rougher and rougher the longer I played it, but that's mostly because of how much I had to do in such a short amount of time. If you take your time with it, making sure to enjoy all of the grisly details, and if you can convince a few friends to come along for the ride, then Left 4 Dead 2 definitely defends its title as one of the kings of zombie games. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of finish it.
Finish it!
That's all the time we have for today, guys, so please, as always, let me know what you thought about today's episode somewhere on the internet. Guys, don't forget, I'm going on tour, and I could be near you somewhere in the Midwest. If you want to check out my tour, head over to thecompletionist.com/live. Again, that's thecompletionist.com/live. A big thank you to all of our patrons. Head over to patreon.com/thecompletionist to get all kinds of fun and unique content. We really appreciate it. Come join the community. Come join the Discord. I'm there all the time. I have a problem. Come join that problem with me. Guys, I've enjoyed The Completionist, and I'll see you next week for the brand new episode. Bye-bye.